Welcome to the Corporate Facility Council's October 1st Wednesday webinar, Sustainability and Material Health Part 2, presented by Howard Williams and Kendra Marks. Everyone has been muted for audio quality. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into the Q&A box, and we'll go over them during the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the Corporate Facilities website. If you want a PDF of the PowerPoint, you may go ahead and download it now. On your control panel, there's a section called Handouts, second to the bottom. Simply expand that box and you can click and download the PDF. Okay, at this time I want to go ahead and introduce our presenters. The first one is Howard Williams. He's Senior Vice President, Sustainability, previously Vice President and General Manager, Interiors Division of Construction Specialties, Inc. The division received the 2003 Pennsylvania Governor's Award for Environmental Excellence. He led the Active Business Unit's transition to non-PVC products. The division won the U.S. EPA's Mid-Atlantic Region 2011 Award for Environmental Excellence. Howard has testified before the U.S. Senate and House supporting chemical policy reform. He participated in the UN Chemicals and Products meetings in Geneva, Belgrade, and Boston. He serves on the Certification Standards Board of the Cradle to Grave Product Innovation Institute. He is LEED AP certified. Howard has initiated the CS Transparency Labeling Program. His work in the area of material health led to the CS cameo in the documentary The Human Experiment. He was an active member of the USGBC Supply Chain Optimization Working Group developing language for LEED version 4 Materials and Resources Option 3. His co-presenter today is Kendra Marks. She is the Corporate Sustainability Coordinator since 2013. She manages environmental product declarations, i.e. cradle-to-grave product certifications and health product declarations, implements environmental impact reduction strategies, and assists with corporate sustainability strategy. She serves as a sustainability research consultant on market trends for the business units. Kendra's goal is to expose CNS to the foundation of sustainability. She uses the 3 pillars of sustainability, economic, social, environmental, to fundamentally change everything about the company to achieve indefinite growth. At this time, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our presenters.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you for everyone for tuning in today to listen to our second webinar of the 3-part series. So today's webinar is Reducing the Complexities of Sustainable Design. And sustainable design requires systems thinking in the complex balancing of multiple attributes, numerous requirements, and a variety of products selected on the basis of their impacts and benefits. So we have 2 learning objectives for today. And the first is we'd like to summarize the 5 primary pillars of sustainability, which Howard will go into further on in the webinar, in order to demonstrate how CS helps optimize customers' design. And our second learning objective is to make the stakeholder sustainable design requirements using multiple environmental and human health attributes to guide and determine the material selection and approval process. So before we get started, just a little bit about Construction Specialties, who Howard and I both work for. So CS was formed in 1948, and it is a privately owned U.S. company with 17 offices and plants around the globe. We manufacture both here in the U.S. and around the world. And we have 70 LEED AP and Green Associates in order to better work with our customers and collaborate on future design projects. We also have 6 product lines that offer various cradle-to-cradle certifications at various certification levels. And we are a solutions provider for various architectural design challenges. So to get started, I just want to, since today is the second webinar of a 3-part webinar series, I just wanted to start with a brief recap from our first session in order to help connect the series. So for our first session, let's just talk a little bit about what is sustainability. And the most broadly accepted definition of sustainability is to create and maintain the conditions under which humans and nature can exist in productive harmony to support present and future generations. There isn't one exact definition of sustainability, and as you embark on your own personal journey, I encourage you to create a definition that is important to you and is aligned with your organization's mission. So this definition can be your mantra, if you will, and it'll help guide your organization through its journey. And you'll hear me mention setting goals and setting a vision and using them as your guide throughout this session today, because it'll become very important as we talk about our material selection process. Sustainability is comprised of 5 main pillars. We have waste, water, carbon, social, and material health. And Howard will go into detail about those in just a little bit. But the best way and the only way to ensure humans and nature exist in balance is to address each of these. And I have this photo of 2 little green handprints on here as a little reminder to think positive and leave handprints. Everything that we do leaves a footprint, and there's always going to be trade-offs. But in every decision that you make, just try to think about what can we do to do less bad and instead do more good and leave positive handprints. And with that, I'm passing it on to Howard.
As Kendra said, we're covering first some of the things that we did in the first session just to really be able to position things. And when we look at sustainability, it's certainly in the scale of time, it's a new concept, but certainly not new to many of us. It really has its roots in the 19th century, where people were really concerned about how many Earths do we need to sustain this rapidly growing population. And again, you have to go back and realize that was in the 19th century, and it was pretty well food-oriented. In many respects, we've solved a lot of the food issues, but we haven't solved the distribution of that across the globe. It then progressed into natural resource, where it was oriented toward environmentalism, and that's now and certainly still in place. Stepping then further into sustainability, as Kendra defined it, just meeting the needs of a developing world so that future generations can have the same opportunities for development and growth that we've had. Into that then, also as time progressed, was the recognition of social equity. And just the general question of, will the wealthy nations or people buy all the resources away from common good? And of course, the reality that we're seeing today is that that's not happening. There's a broadening of social equity, and that also begins to affect some of the prior issues, whether it's food distribution or natural resources. People wanting to know that the diamonds are not blood diamonds, and the minerals that are used in manufacturing the hardware that goes into a computer, that these minerals were not blood minerals. So the social equity program ties very nicely into sustainability, and of course emerged the prescriptive measures like for green building, whether it's BREEAM or LEED, and they were largely natural resource and energy oriented. With that came the realization that, all right, these are buildings, but there's people too. And organizations like Healthcare Without Harm, or the Collaborative for High Performance Schools, writing the Green Guide for Healthcare that led to LEED for Healthcare, began to really take that human component and work toward actualizing some of the dreams, optimizing some of the opportunities. With that, then, LEED version 4 took several years to move through the process of approvals across any number of organizations, but LEED v4 is now in play, and LEED v4 incorporated a number of people-oriented, people-related standards relative to material health. And also what's emerged onto the building scene is the well building standard, and that seeks to put together a standard whereby design is understood, design is evidence-based. Is this really working, or is it nice? So we now see a number of standards that bring the people side into a stronger position. Within your organization, you've done a sustainability study. You've researched, you've canvassed 3,400 of your members. A little over 11% of the members replied, so it's a significant answer. And what you've recognized is that sustainable projects have a lower environmental impact, fewer harmful emissions, lower energy, and with that wonderful part comes the saving of money to pay for some of the energy optimizations, and dealing with products, how products are manufactured, and the recycled content. We've also included in there the link to the study. The study is broader than that small recap. We also spoke about toxic chemicals in your home and the realization that today, in the umbilical cord blood of a newborn, there are over 250 toxic chemicals. That newborn hasn't breathed the air, hasn't eaten food or had water to drink, and it hasn't yet had the creams and lotions smeared all over its soft little body. So there was no way that it was going to, everyone thought that the womb was the safest place. And the reality is that these toxic chemicals have broken across the womb through the mother's blood. And we generally are polluted, and for babies to enter the world pre-polluted is a sad case. But these are the chemicals that are in our homes, and sometimes we think, just a little bit, it's not that big a deal. But all the little bits add up, and all the little bits can affect in a very small dose. I take a Claritin every day. That's a tiny pill, and that tiny pill keeps me from suffering the effects of various allergies. So what's the significance there? The significance there to you is that you design and you create buildings and you do spaces and you renovate spaces, and you do that on the basis of function and purpose. So you can have a great design that's defeated by materials that are poorly designed. And you can have a sustainable space, but it needs to have the materials to support that. So more often than not, sustainable materials being defined by the 5 attributes that we'll talk about in a minute, but good design is a matter of quality, and quality materials supporting that. So you have a powerful position as the buyers, as the specifiers of product, to turn to your supplier and vendor and say, what's in your product? Help us understand what's in there, because we're building for material health. And when just simply by asking that question, you're giving the manufacturer or the manufacturer's representative the opportunity to go back to the office and say, here's what our customers are thinking, here's what our customers are thinking. And it all adds up, and it's really great, because then manufacturers want to please the customer, and creating the good designs, not just the color, not just the shape, but also the composition of the product. Many years ago, Kaiser Permanente, whom many of you likely know, as I think they are the world's largest healthcare provider and insurer, we had a national agreement with Kaiser, and they came to us and said, we are eliminating PVC from our buildings, we're beginning the process, and we want you to redesign your product to contain no PVC. You have a year to do that, and if you don't, you lose your national agreement. Our national agreement was 7 figures, and that got our attention very quickly. So not every ask is quite so large as Kaiser's, but the reality is they all add up, and they all bring forth change that's needed. So the primary aspects of sustainability: energy. Are we reducing it? Are we buying renewable? Are we using solar? How are we working within our spaces? Do we have light sensors, occupancy sensors? Water. Are we conserving the water? Do we have flow fixtures? Do we have conservation measures in place? Are we looking at the cooling tower water usage. Are we looking at irrigation? Conserve water, reduce it. Materials. How are the materials designed? And again, function? Sure. All materials have to function. And today, though, the great part is that this sustainability and these questions have been in place long enough that the options are there. So materials, are they designed for human health? Are they free of toxic chemicals that are harmful to not just you and your occupants, but also the people that made it, or the people that made the stuff that goes into the stuff you're buying, and then the people that are going to install it, the workers, or those that will take it apart. So are they designed from healthful constituents, and can it be taken apart and recycled? In our quest for PVC-free material, we looked at fiberglass. And fiberglass could very well have been extruded or pultruded and served the purpose, but the reality is you can't recycle it. Even the scrap, even the cutoffs end up having to go into the landfill. So can materials be recycled? And does the manufacturer want them back? So that's the design for reutilization to keep it going. And then we talked about the societal aspects when we were talking briefly back in an earlier slide about social equity. So we're again going to just take a look at this section too. We've chattered a bit, and I think if we had the opportunity to rewrite, and I did rewrite it a little bit here, sustainable design requires systems thinking. Again, it's you've got your function and purpose. How are you going to use that space? What's going to go in it? And then you've got your materials. And not only your materials, but you have the buying power to expect sustainable behaviors from your suppliers. You could make an environmentally, sustainably responsible product, and yet you could still be an environmental rascal. You could be making it in a third world country using child labor and polluting every river and stream within 10 miles. So I think behavior is also a very important part of sustainability. Sustainable products manufactured in a sustainable process. And the learning objectives, not just so that you can understand how we help you. The reality is that so many manufacturers today are doing these sustainable attributes and are making sustainable products. So they're going to help you across the board, and that you'll be able to work with your stakeholders within your building and really be able to show them in a very concrete way how you're meeting the design. And just a quick stop for a second. Generally, materials being defined as concrete and steel, products being defined as chairs and perhaps your entry mat. We've created a matrix that brings together, or to some degree harmonizes, the protocols and the standards across 6 primary categories. We have the 5 basic categories of sustainability, and then adding on health and wellness, because buildings aren't always just inanimate spaces. Buildings can actually interact, even though they are inanimate, but your designs can interact with people in ways that create health and wellness, or the opportunity for health and wellness. And you'll also see, as you come down the left column, the WELL building standard, biophilic design, some of the things that you may not have yet begun to look at. We're going to talk about that a bit further. And then the circular economy is a phrase that's being used quite a bit in the marketplace, and we'll continue to hear more of. And the circular economy is essentially, let's be sure we've got these 5 basic pillars of sustainability covered, and let's be sure that we keep materials in circulation. And when you think about the resources that are required for future generations, the reality is that we do need to be able to reuse materials. We need to be able to recycle them. Healthy materials designed today, free of harmful chemicals, can have a useful life, not just in place, but also a useful life in future generations. to where we're not taking some of the issues that we've skipped over in product design. We're not pushing that responsibility off to a future generation. One of the emerging aspects of design, although it's not necessarily new, is biophilic design. And the best I understand of biophilic design, so philia versus phobia. Phobia is the negative side, and the philia is the positive aspect of it. And there are 14 basic patterns within biophilic design. It's called the architecture of life. And for a moment, we're probably violating virtually every rule of PowerPoint. We're not going to cover all of these, the 7 on this page or the 7 on the next page, but we're going to briefly discuss 14. But first, just a real quick step back to evidence-based design. It seemed to have been predominantly used in healthcare settings, where design influence on healing, staff well-being, and stress reduction, as well as safety, were more readily important, or that the healthcare setting began to study that prior to the office or commercial or education setting. And it's just a matter of designers rightly wanting to know, is this just some clever idea, or is there substance to this? Can we use this and really see beneficial outcomes? So the study of evidence-based design has allowed a number of design concepts to be vetted and proven. So we'll look briefly here at just a couple within biophilic design. And I would say, too, what we see here is an excellent piece done by Terrapin Green. And in just, I think it's 52 pages, they so succinctly and effectively outline what each of these patterns are and how these patterns have a positive impact. So when we look at visual connection with nature, we all know that if we just stare out the window for a few minutes and look across at trees, grass, and the world, we feel better. And the reality is they've studied that. And they've arrived at the conclusion that if you prioritize in the design, if you prioritize real nature over simulated, and then simulated nature over no nature at all, and essentially anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes per day reduces stress and improves concentration. So there's a qualified statement or a quantified statement that we're more productive. And then within the real over simulated and then simulated over no nature at all, they've also determined that looking at pictures of nature or a mural of nature has the same impact. So that mural can be in a hallway, or it can be a picture on the wall within the office or within the school, or whatever the setting may be. It will still reduce stress and improve concentration and performance. And then the non-visual connection with nature is sounds and smells. People feel more physically and emotionally healthy. It affects staff retention, higher performance, better outcomes. So the whole of this, again, has been studied. And when we go then and look at the remaining portions of biophilic design, just want to look at number 10, complexity and order, that there are literally proven patterns and ratios, size and relationship ratios that really create effective backgrounds. And that when those ratios are within the, the wall art, or it's a pattern within the carpet, selection of plants and where you place them, textures and design contours can all have a very positive impact on the well-being and the performance of everyone within spaces that are designed accordingly. When we look at the well building standard, we just realize that design is a just a perfect place in time, because, as I talked briefly, inanimate structures actually have the possibility of contributing to human health and well-being. Whereas before, stairways would be hidden because everyone convenient to use the elevator. Today, stairways are out, they're convenient, and maybe they're only good for the first 2 or 3 floors because perhaps people aren't going to walk further up a set of stairs, but the reality is having it available, or maybe at 2nd floor is where there's a nice mezzanine. Dr. Claudia Miller from the University of Texas was a couple of years ago on a panel at HKS Architects, and she said architects and designers have a greater influence on human health than physicians. And she effectively quieted the room when she said that, because it was a thought that wasn't out in the consciousness, so to speak, and it wasn't in print. And then she went on to explain that as individuals, we may choose not to listen to the doctor. We may choose not to go forth with our New Year's Eve resolution to exercise and lose weight. And we may actually even choose not to take our medications. But the way buildings are designed can have a positive effect. There may not be a choice of go up 2 sets of stairs or 1 flight of stairs to get to the elevators. Or the carpet is not off-gassing. The carpet is a quality material. Other products within the building are made of healthful materials. And biophilic design has been brought in. So suddenly, everything that's very comfortable and nice about the building comes into play without the occupant really having to make that decision to use the building or not use the building. And the spaces are very comfortable. ASID Industry Outlook for 2015, the American Society of Interior Design, Industry Outlook for 2015. Healthy behaviors, designing for healthy behaviors is the #1 most transformative trend within the health and well-being micro-trend. And again, you all are in the business of creating buildings, using and maintaining buildings. It's a great time for that. And what building owner or what lessee wouldn't want healthy and vibrant workers, tenants, and who pays the rent? Who pays more for a better office or apartment? Studies are showing that green, and that's a pretty broad statement, that green design brings higher rent, higher resale value, and with it, we are more healthy and more content. Again, not going to go over all of these, but these are all verified, evidence-based design factors and outcomes. What's happening relative to factors that influence health outcomes, what's being measured or evaluated, and then the occupant well-being and perception of outcomes, because some of it is our perception. If we feel better, we're probably going to actually be better. And then the organizational outcomes that are there because of it. And there are also studies of student scores, student achievement and learning in these spaces is higher. Absenteeism reduced, medical complaints reduced, hitting deadlines, and it really is, it's a matter of invest in people for a return on investment. A well-certified project can add measurable value in health and well-being to its occupants, and it's going to increase savings through productivity, meaningful return on investment, and when people are at the heart of design, construction, and operations development, just really have the ability to add meaningful value. And personnel costs, as you see there, salary and benefits is 90% of what's going on. within that building. So maintaining and keeping happy workers and getting a better investment on that is significant. This is a pretty big statistic. Their attitude about work is adversely affected by the quality of their environment. I know of a facility where a portion of the staff is literally in the basement. And the basement was only ever designed to be a conference room used from time to time. And because of staff growth, which is great from a successful business standpoint, there are several people located literally in the basement. And they aren't always the happiest people in the building. So the physical workplace is one of the top 3 factors affecting performance and job satisfaction. So when that's brought into consideration, we have an opportunity to move the dial and move the outcome. More on corporate health and wellness. 50% of employers offer health and wellness initiatives. Companies say health and productivity are essential to their strategy. Makes sense. To execute on the strategy, you've got to have the people there. And that's a very important part of what we need to be doing. I will also take back, though, and step into, we're chattering on about this, or at least I am at the moment, chattering on about this, and I don't want to lose sight of what we had said earlier, that function and purpose is what drives the design, but if we're not using the right materials in there, healthful materials that aren't off-gassing toxic chemicals or aren't composed of toxic chemicals, we're defeating the design. So we have an opportunity. Sustainability has a holistic benefit and really is very supportive of these concepts. Well and green fit nicely together, and as I had shown in that earlier matrix, well and LEED harmonize, and they also harmonize with the Living Building Challenge. So the two working together give you the ability to take LEED beyond where it is at the present and to focus on the 7 concepts of well building, which deal with air, water, nourishment. Well buildings are the WELL standard. Also goes into what are people eating in the building. It's the wholeness of it is focused on people and sets performance requirements in 7 categories or concepts, and they really work well, or they deal with human health. I just need to, okay. As you can see from this graphic, it's this bit of a life cycle for the building, and each feature is designed to address issues that impact the health or comfort or knowledge of the occupants. When I first looked at the WELL standard and I saw this image and the anatomy or the attachment to the functions of our life or of our body, I was, whoa, how can these all be tracked back through? And the reality is, again, in the development of the standard and in the development of the intent and implementation, various aspects of the standard are linked back to the human body systems that are intended to benefit. And that's a step in a direction where most of the time we're so nuts and bolts and we're so, bricks and mortar, wood and drywall, that we get focused on let's build the shell, let's build the structure. It's going to be neat, clean, and there's a couple of windows, and then people are going to come in and use it. And to see the dynamic of bringing humanity into that process really helped me grab the standard, or grab onto the standard, and helped me to see its relevance. Because we look at the complexity of the building, It's wiring, it's cabling, it's wireless, it's plumbing, it's fixtures, it's carpet, it's skin, and in many cases you could almost draw the physiological diagram of the building. So we attend to these systems when we're attending to the structure. And for years we've not really looked at these systems relative to the structure and the workings of the people that are in there.
So now that Howard has reviewed the 5 pillars of sustainability and really dove into the importance of that health and wellness has in a facility, we're going to actually take a look and see how to incorporate all of this into the actual design process. So one of the first steps is to have a conversation with the various stakeholders about the goals of the project. Now, ask a few questions. How do the goals of this design project fit into your organization's overarching sustainability goals as a company? Are there certain aspects that are more material or more important to your company than others? And that kind of goes along the 5 pillars of sustainability. Are you really concerned about getting your CO2 reduced? Are you more concerned about waste reduction, that sort of thing? Or are you really focused on trying to make your space more healthy and more happy for its occupants? And is there any value in registering the project for LEED or Living Building Challenge or going for a WELL certification? So once you've established these goals, these can serve as your true north throughout the project. So when your team is frustrated or confused, because I mean, we all know that this happens at some point or another, you need something to guide you and help push you through. And then once these goals are established, you can move on to the second step and establish these specific goals for material selection. So I'm not going to read through all of these, but some that a lot of some project teams use are, sourcing sustainable materials, or they care about reclaimed materials, sourcing local products, and this Howard touched on the nature-inspired design and bringing nature into your facility and letting your occupants connect with nature more so. So what is the process then? You can bring all of your stakeholders together early on in the design process for a design charrette, and that means everybody like your contractors, architects, designers, owners, managers of various departments to really figure out, okay, what are the challenges? Are you renovating an existing facility? And, how were the occupants at that time? Were there any complaints with, in terms of acoustics or in terms of lighting? All those kind of conversations. Do a survey to see what you could improve upon with the design and bring in everybody else that you see fit and get this charrette done early. Then use this charrette to create a document and a methodology for the materials research. Start early and divide and conquer, because the materials research portion of it is big and it's a complex task. So as an example, I've shared on this image here is Smith Group's simplified version of one of their material selection processes. This was used for a Living Building Challenge project, and where they, which means they couldn't use products with red list chemicals. So the goal is to use optimized products that are safer and promote a healthier interior environment. And then you might want to use this process diagram. So you can kind of see from the left, they're trying to find out what kind of documentation is out there. Did the manufacturer disclose all of the ingredients? Yes, no diagrams. And then if they were disclosed, did they have red list chemicals? If not, was there another alternative product out there on the market that they could potentially switch to? And it takes you all the way to the end. Do not use this product or use this. So this process diagram is great if you're looking at HPDs, Declare, or other material ingredient lists. But then the same thing can be said for C2C. If you select a Cradle to Cradle certified product that is silver or gold, you can cut out all this in between and just go straight to this green box, which means used products, because there aren't red list chemicals present. So much of this advice on this slide comes from case studies that were produced by various architects and design firms that are leaders in the material health arena, but some of these just really resonated with me, so I wanted to pull them together on this slide. So the first is start with materials research, selection, and specification process early on because it is a task with big challenges, but it's a necessary one. Howard talked about what makes good design. Well, good design is also having good materials, and good materials also incorporates not just, you know, good coloring or good performance, but also good, healthy, and safe materials. Be careful with the blanket "we comply" from manufacturers and ask for supportive documentation. This isn't something that's done out of deception, but the supply chains are really complex. And, you know, depending on the size of the company, they might not know better. I mean, that's the honest truth. So just ask for some supportive documentation. Ask for cradle-to-cradle certifications, HPDs, safety data sheets, or other product literature. And try to follow some of the best practices that are out there on the market by, you know, following maybe like LEED's guidelines that they have. And I just want to take a moment to debunk the myth that sustainable products with safer ingredients have a price premium. The truth is that they don't. This green building industry has been in existence for about 20 years, and it wouldn't have gotten this big if manufacturers couldn't find a way to get their products down to a competitive price. So where you really see costs adding up are in the soft costs. It's this materials research. And that's why I keep talking about, you know, getting this done early, because if you get this done early, you can divvy up, divide and conquer, and work this out throughout your entire process. And then collaborate for efficiency. There are a lot of different players already working on this in the green building environment. So lean on your peers, experts, and look for databases for support so you don't have to recreate the wheel. And as more and more people join on in this and request for information, the more streamlined this process will become. And those soft costs that I talked about, those burdens will be minimized. So there are resources later on in this presentation that you can access. I have a lot of focus on databases in the last bit of this presentation that have links to them. So you can go in and try to source products through those databases. And then keep the material selection simple. Get buy-in from senior management and implement policies, whether it be like a chemicals management policy or something like that. Just something, again, you need things to help guide your project team on the path forward. And identify focused materials. If you're new to this, some project teams recommended starting with focused materials or product groups that you think might have the greatest likelihood for health or environmental impacts. So, I don't know, paints, carpet, sealants, wall protection, something like that. So if you focus on these certain materials, you can break up this process into more achievable bites. Okay, then comparing products. As I mentioned earlier on, there's always going to be trade-offs. So what do you care about when you're sourcing your product? Obviously, you're always going to care about the performance, the quality of the project, but really for this conversation, I'm kind of talking about the environmental and material health trade-off. And going back to your goals, you know, did you just want to know? Are you guys at the point where you just want to know what's in the product, or are you trying to source some safer materials? So you can kind of see here in this diagram, I have phthalates, PFCs, formaldehyde. You know, if you create a matrix like this, you can maybe use some of the red list chemicals or maybe Perkins and Will's precautionary list for certain materials that you want to avoid throughout your design process. And you have the manufacturer here on the left-hand side, your various manufacturers, various product types, and you can go in and check off yes, no. They have, you know, do they have phthalates? Yes. This one doesn't. Okay, but it does. This one does, but this other one doesn't have PFCs. Maybe you want to create this matrix to help you visualize these trade-offs that you have to sort through. Okay, so the next I'm going to go through some tools for assessing environmental and health impacts. And as Howard mentioned, you can have products that and spaces that are highly visuable, and you can enjoy interior spaces with products that perform without having to sacrifice the health of the space, as long as you work with safer materials. So one of the things you can do is just ask your supplier some questions. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but you know, while you're working with your supply chains, you can really drive this further if you just ask some simple questions. And so one of the ones that I'm going to kind of elaborate on is how green are your products? And by green, that is a really broad term that could mean various things, but I'm going to really focus on the material health and what are some of the tools and databases you can go to look at to see how would a manufacturer validate those green claims. So for health assessment tools, I have 3 on here. The first is the globally harmonized safety data sheet. And so this is most commonly used for applied products because it's required by law. But products like articles, so for example, wall protection or textiles, we're not actually even required to disclose ingredients or hazards. And I really think, and you can see on here I have the proprietary section circled, because it comes down to people have a right to know what they're using, what they're surrounded by every day. I mean, we have food labels, but building products still don't have that, and building products aren't even under the same regulation as the FDA. So just for an example, last week, the FDA stepped up and banned a suite of antibacterial ingredients, including triclosan, from consumer products, but yet this same antimicrobial is found in a lot of building products under a name called microban. It's used in paints, carpets, and others. And it took the FDA 40 years to ban this. But in 2003, the CDC had established that there is no evidence to support that antimicrobial products do anything, that they can make consumers and patients healthier or even prevent disease. So I brought up this point just to kind of provide more evidence that it's important to ask for ingredient disclosure and optimization. So you see REACH over here to the right, and that's a regulation within the European Union. And I'm not going to go too much into this, and I really put this on here to kind of go back to those various lists. I talked about the red list. Well, REACH has a candidate list. Its substances of very high concern. So if you guys are trying to figure out which substances should we avoid on our projects, you could go to the REACH website and pull up the candidate list and pull from there. Another tool is the green screen for safer chemicals. This is a tool that you can use if you feel so inclined to assess the material for yourself, or if you're trying to understand some of the disclosures from a health product declaration, or if you're looking for products that are in compliance with LEED, because the green screen can contribute to LEED, both options 1 and options 2. And you see down here, benchmark 1, it's clearly red, and it's kind of telling you avoid this chemical concern. And then the green ones on here are the preferred, it's the safer chemical. And if you've downloaded this template, if you download this PowerPoint, I have these hyperlinks so you can get direct links to these resources as I go through here. So this next slide is all about the Cradle to Cradle and the various resources that it has on their websites and what the kind of information you can expect from manufacturers. So C2C is a design philosophy. It's about safer ingredients being perpetually cycled. So this kind of goes into the after supply chain questions, and for us, this is really, C2C for us is our design philosophy for construction specialties. This would be one of those typical responses that you would get from your supply chain if you were to ask some of those questions that I had on the previous slide. But for the purposes of this webinar, I'm going to focus on the certification standpoint. So Cradle to Cradle is a third-party certified multi-attribute certification. You can get it in this multi-attribute form or also in the material health certificate form that I have right on here. And really what it does is it verifies down to 100 parts per million, and it assesses the safety of the product. You can get all the way from bronze to platinum, and you can go onto their website, and it's also a product database, so you can click on the link here and it'll take you right to their product registry where you can pull products from there. If you're working on a LEED project and you want to work for the first credit or the second credit of option 1 or option 2, you can click on there and get all the products to comply with that. And their material health certificate is really great because it has the VOC information right on there. for the product, it tells you that there's no exposure from carcinogens, mutagens, reproductive toxicants. It really brings all this information right to the forefront. And some product manufacturers will disclose the product summary report that they get from Cradle to Cradle. And CS, we do that through this transparency website. And this transparency website was designed in collaboration with Perkins and Will. And it's the first on-product label of its kind where we disclose the different product contents. But then you can go to our transparency website and pull up the product summary, get some of the content, the best ecological benchmarks, and get the full report right on here. So another product certification would be Declare and the Living Product certification, and they are both provided by the International Living Future Institute. So the Declare is kind of the nutrition label for products. It's clear disclosure of products and ingredients, and it's an approved pathway for LEED version 4, Materials and Resources option 1. And down here at the bottom, you can kind of see there's these 3 check boxes, LBC, red list free, compliant, or declared. This red list free means that all the ingredients have been disclosed and none of the ingredients are on the red list. Compliant means that they disclose 99% and there might be a red list chemical on there, but it's due to an exception. And then declared just means that there are red list chemicals present, but it just means that the company is invested in transparency. And again, you can, if you click on this Declare sticker on the slide, once you've downloaded it, it'll take you to the Declare database where you can access products that have this Declare label. And this living product on the right-hand side is their new multi-attribute certification, and it discloses like the carbon impacts, water. It plays into the beauty of the product, the equity, and they are even focused on that whole living product as in having like a positive handprint. And then the next one is Health Product Declaration. Health Product Declaration is a disclosure tool that allows manufacturers to upload their information in a consistent format. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this and the other product certifications, just because our 3rd webinar series is going to do a deep dive into this. But this is another certification that can comply with LEED v4. And you can really use this HPD to communicate with the manufacturer and ask them questions and understand why certain materials are in their products. Are there any alternatives? Is it a performance feature that they have to have in there? But this is one of the really strong points of the HPD is architects and designers feel that allows them to easily communicate with the manufacturer. And this TURI, it's the Toxic Use Reduction Institute. This is a database I put on here for this presentation because we had a lot of people in the last session ask us about where can you go to find cleaner solutions. And so if you go to this website, they have, you can find different solvents, you can go by vendors, you can get performance trials and that sort of thing. So this is all for cleaning solvents on this left-hand side. And then this database over here is designer pages. It's linked to manufacturers' websites, and you can really see product information from them. And it also has transparency filters, so you can easily search for LEED v4 compliant products, C2C, HPD, or EPDs. And this last tool is a really new and exciting database that you can access and you can sign up for, and it is free as well. It's Mindful Materials. It was a labeling initiative that was started by the design firm HKS, and they've graciously opened this up to anybody else that would like to access this and sign up for the information. It's organized by different CSI divisions. Each product that uploads their products is separated by the CSI division, so you can easily search for this for your design project. And it really allows manufacturers to share product content information in the standard format. And you can see they have everything from C2C to EPDs to the recycled content on here. And it's really a great tool for product libraries.
So thank you, Kendra, and thank you all for sitting in on this, listening in. We have another part coming, I believe, yes, February 1st, and we're really very open also to, obviously, your questions. We would appreciate those because they're going to help us put our third session together and allow us to do that a little bit better, or perhaps even a whole lot better. So thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to Josh.
Yes, thank you. Great presentation. If anyone does have any questions for Howard or Kendra on your control panel, just feel free and type them into the question box. I'll give you just a moment. We are toward the tail end of time also, so we just have a few minutes anyway. So we'll give you a moment to put that in. And can you just give them Kendra kind of mentioned a little bit ago what part 3 is going to be about while we're waiting to see if any questions come in. Can you give them a little teaser of the topic?
Yeah, sure. So really in this third session, we're going to take a deeper dive into a lot of the very different product certifications, verifications, really see what does it take to have a LEED v4 compliant HPD, how does Cradle to Cradle contribute to that, how does Declare, just really look at the pros and the cons, not even really the cons, just do a comparative analysis of the different product certifications. Because I know that there's a lot of stuff out there, and it can get really confusing. And that next session will really be about, it's not a competition of product certifications. It's just those should be the validation to a manufacturer's claims, and that's really going to be the focus of that session.
Excellent. Okay, I don't really see any questions. I want to thank everyone for attending. Kendra and Howard, thank you for presenting, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.